Magnus, kan du høre oss?
Jeg hører hør ni meg?
Ja, vi gjør det. Kan vi få litt høyere lyd på Magnus? Supert. Nå har jeg kjørt en introduksjon på deg, Magnus. Jeg vet ikke om du hørte det. Jeg håper det var riktig det jeg sa. Hvis ikke så det fint om du retter opp. Og så overlater jeg bare skjermen til deg. Vær så god.
Tack. Jag lite ledsen att jag inte kunde vara i Oslo idag, men vi får köra det så här. Och jag tänkte kanske prata engelska så att det blir tydligt vad jag säger. So I'll switch to English for now. And my contribution here will be to talk a little bit about the work that we have done at AI Sweden on building the model called GPT-3, which has been the first large language model for the Nordic region. A little bit of background. So here in Sweden, we were quite early adopters with the new type of language model. So I'm guessing several of you at least know this story. So back in 2017, the transformer architecture was introduced by Google, which is a neural network design. And the year after that, 2018, we started to see the new types of language models coming out based on the transformer architecture. And we started a project quite soon after that called Language Models for Swedish Authorities. And the goal of that project was to start accelerating the use of transformer-based language models in Swedish society, with a specific focus on the public sector, because the public sector in Sweden, and I guess in Norway, has to use national text data. Right? So that project resulted in the first batch of Swedish language model, which were all based on the BERT architecture. And it also resulted on a quite significant uptake in the public sector of Swedish language models. But then, of course, in the middle of that project in 2020, we saw the birth of the new generation of large decoder-style language model, which is now called generative AI. Right? And that was around the time we started thinking about how can we do that in Sweden of large language models. And this was the reason why we formed the Natural Language Understanding Research Group at AI Sweden. And that was 2 years ago. The explicit focus of this Natural Language Understanding Research Group is to build large language models in Sweden, for Sweden, and by extension for the entire Nordic region. And so since last year, we have had the first batch of models coming out, which are called GPT-3, and I will talk a little bit more about them. But quite importantly, the type of development that you need to do when you build these large language models is quite resource intensive. And there are just a couple of players internationally that have the capacity to actually build these type of models. And I would say we don't have any of those actors in the Nordic region. So for us to be able to realize this type of development, we really need to collaborate. And this was the reason why we ended up forming the research team here at AI Sweden, because AI Sweden is sort of in the middle of everything. It's a partner organization where we have academic partners, we have public sector partners, and we have a large number of private sector partners. And also, very importantly, we are funded by the state through the Swedish Innovation Agency. And they have been funding all the projects around the development of Swedish language models all the way back from 2019 onwards. So I think this the collaborative setting has been very important for us in order to realize what we have done so far. And talking more specifically about the GPT-3 development initiative, that was also a collaborative effort where we worked together with several other organizations that supported the idea of building a large language model in Sweden. So we have RISE, which is the Research Institutes of Sweden. We have WASP, which is our privately funded AI and autonomous systems program, WASP. We have the National Supercomputer Center at Linköping University, which hosts our only dedicated infrastructure for AI, which is called Berzelius. It's a fairly large supercomputer with nice A100 graphics cards from NVIDIA. And so we also collaborated with NVIDIA because we train on NVIDIA hardware, and we use NVIDIA software to do the training in an optimal way. The only thing that we couldn't really find a partnership around was data. And we really tried that, but it, for several reasons, did not work out to have partnerships around this. So what we ended up was to build our own data set for training a large language model for the Nordic languages. And we call this the Nordic Pile. It's based on existing data sets and open sources, like the Norwegian Colossal Corpus and Oscar. We have the common crawl derivatives, which is the main part of our data set. But we have also done some bespoke crawls, like the Swedish discussion forums. We have a couple of big ones here in Sweden, so those are included. We have also scraped some government websites, or a lot of government websites, and used available open data sources for this. The question around data is something that you could discuss at length. My take on this is that if we want to be competitive in the Nordic region, we need to be able to use Nordic data. We should be able to use the data that exists in our wonderful libraries and in the wonderful public sector that we have. At the moment, it's difficult, and I'm sure you all are aware of that. But so using the Nordic Pile, which is a fairly large data set, 300 billion tokens or so, we have then trained a set of models, just focus on that column there, which is the model sizes. So ranging from very small models, like 100 million parameters, up to biggest one that we trained is 40 billion parameters. Our initial plan was actually to go even bigger, above 100 billion parameters, but developments in the field were sort of pointing in the direction that we should probably go back and iterate on the data process instead of just going bigger. And you have to keep in mind that the development that we did on GPT-3, that was 1.5 years ago. So the models have existed for a year already. There has been a lot of developments in the field since then. We have also done some instruction tuning on some of the models, or most of them. So the models have been available. It's quite difficult to evaluate generative models. We haven't solved that problem here in the Nordic region because we don't have any evaluation frameworks for generative language models in the Nordic region. What we have done is to use evaluation benchmarks in English, which is the graph on the right there, which is based on something called LM Harness. And what we can see there is our model behaves approximately as good as other models of the same type from the same time. So that's good to know. And for performance in the Nordic languages, we simply just compute perplexity of language modeling. So how good is the model at actually doing what it's trained to do, namely language modeling? And of course, the results are quite unsurprising. Our GPT-3 models are better than other open models at this time, at least. But this is by far not a solved problem, and this is something we really need to collaborate on in the Nordic region, and we are doing that actively also to try to come up with good evaluation benchmarks for these type of models. So as I said, the model has been available for quite some time. You can actually see it up there in the blue box up there, GPT-3. This is a compilation done by Hugging Face on generative AI models over time. All the blue and green boxes are models that are actually available. Blue are downloadable, but under certain restrictions, and green ones are completely open. And the red ones under the line there, they're the proprietary models like ChatGPT and stuff like that. But I'm really happy to now announce that our model has now turned green since last week. So the models are now completely open. You can find them at their Hugging Face repository there. All of the models are completely open, so you can download them, you can fine-tune them, you can integrate them into your products and do whatever you want with them. That has taken us quite a long time. As I said, the models have been available for a year already. And we opted for a very careful strategy. So first, a restricted pre-release where the models were only available for research in the Nordic region. And I mean, that's one of the messages I typically tell people that start to develop models. Think about how you want to actually deliver the models once you're done. So what is the sort of, should you provide an API to the models, or should they be openly released? And we believe that our models should be openly released. So we're done with GPT-3. That's a finished initiative right now. And we are now looking ahead. Our next goal in the NLU team here at AI Sweden is to build the next generation of foundation models for Sweden and maybe the Nordic region. So we're going for multimodal capacity in the next iteration of models, much larger and general capacity of the models themselves. And we are also looking into more international collaborations at the moment. We are taking part in several European initiatives. So one, I think, was mentioned, Trust LLM, which is together with actors from the entire Nordic region, where we will build a large Germanic language model, or several Germanic language models. We're also part of something called Deploy AI, which will build the AI on-demand platform for Europe. And we're also looking ahead at other types of foundation model initiatives in the European context. But I also strongly believe that we should collaborate across the Nordic region. And we have initiated some discussions in the Nordic region, which I think is great, and we should continue that because I think we have the capacity to build something quite useful in the Nordic region. And some of you are already part of our Discord channel. If you are interested in AI development, and if you want to be part of the Nordic community around large language models, you can go to this Discord link and be part of the community. And I think by that, I will stop sharing my screen.
Tack, Magnus.